On this episode of the Layover Live, we're talking about Apple's potential impact on location intelligence data. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 169 of the Layover Live, where we bring you the top article from the Layover each week. I'm Jason Swick, VP of Strategy and Insights here at SimpleView, so welcome to this week's show. Now, I'm fresh off my return from eTourism Conference in Las Vegas, and I have to say that conversations around data, and more specifically, data privacy, are increasingly becoming the norm for many DMOs out there. How data is being processed and stored and used continues to be a very hot topic, not only here in the US, but in the EU and beyond. Tech powerhouses, companies like Google and Apple, have been focusing on privacy for quite some time now and really have been making major announcements in this space, it seems like, on a weekly basis. In fact, iOS 14.5 was an example of Apple doing what it could to help increase transparency on iPhone data collection and tracking across apps. More recently, iOS 15 update, which came around September 20th, could be even more disruptive with tracking privacy updates, providing users with the ability to see how third parties are using their opt-in tracking data, as well as some increased protections that are coming in the way of email, and even the way users' locations are being tracked. So speaking of location tracking, there has been a lot of buzz in the industry around how these changes might affect the geolocation data that many of us rely on today. Data that currently helps us better understand our visitation trends, or who our visitors are, or even how these visitors are moving around our destinations. And so with that, I wanted to bring in a couple of guests to help discuss how this may or may not affect us in this space, specifically mobile intelligence data, as location data has quickly moved for DMOs from a nice to have to a must have, in my opinion. So first and foremost, I've got Evan Saunders on here. You guys know Evan probably very well. He's a familiar face at conferences. And so Evan, Vice President of Global Tourism Hospitality, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much for having us.
You bet. Happy to have you. And maybe, Evan, just a little quick update for probably the two people that are watching that don't know who you are. Maybe give a little background on yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Evan Saunders. I started the global tourism and hospitality vertical at formerly Uber Media, which is now part of Near. We merged companies back in April 2021. And before Uber Media, I was a Chinese marketing expert. I worked with destinations in America, businesses, and helped them engage Chinese travelers. So I lived and breathed that world. Slightly different than the current world I'm in, but always focused around tourism and research and marketing.
Yeah, but somebody who's very familiar in the space of mobile intelligence data. So super happy to have you here. And even more excited, we got a gentleman on the phone who really knows this stuff inside and out. So Benoit Crouchko, who's the CEO of Near EU. He also serves as their global privacy officer. So Benoit, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. A pleasure to be here. Maybe to quickly introduce myself,
yes.
I actually co-founded a company called Timo, and I was the CEO of this company. It's a location intelligence company that was acquired by Near a bit more than a year ago. And so since July 2020, I'm the CEO of Europe for Near, and I'm also responsible for our privacy strategy globally.
Well, great. Thank you again. I know with the time difference, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on. But this, as I've mentioned, is a really important topic. And there's a lot of gray around this area. So I think, again, having you guys come on to talk about this is really great. Now, our article of the week this week comes from Adweek, where it talks about some of these changes and how they may be disruptive to some marketers out there around this new iOS 15 update. So be sure to check that out. But before we get into that, I kind of want to jump in a little bit about location data, because we've talked about location data quite a bit on this show. We've had several guests on to talk about this, but mostly our conversations to date have really been focused, I think, around the ways that DMOs are kind of using this data to help tell a better story with their marketing efforts. So maybe to start things off a little bit, maybe if you guys don't mind sharing or talking a little bit about geolocation data, what it is, and maybe how Near captures some of that data.
Yeah, sure. So we really specialize in what we call human movement data on people and places, and that's really what it is. We've had the luxury of, over the past 3 years, working with over 250 tourism boards to help them leverage this data to answer a lot of questions your past guests have already dived into about where people are going and what they're doing. Very much the human movement side of this. Our company, though, also long before we ever delved into the world of tourism, we're working with this data in retail, shopping centers, real estate developments, restaurants. So we have the luxury of really understanding this data, not just on a macro level, looking at a state, a city, a country, but on truthfully a micro level, looking at literally an individual retail location, the difference between the drive-through or going into that retail location on a fast food restaurant. And understanding not just the collection of this data, but also how it can be applied to organizations and businesses of different shapes and sizes is what we've really had the luxury of honestly understanding from a really granular level over the past few years. But when it comes to this human movement data, personally, my background wasn't in human movement data, and we have the luxury of having this great team behind us and Benoit here to jump into a little bit more of the specifics about this data, how we capture it, and the processes behind that.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. So indeed, we need a lot of location data to be able to leverage and to generate all those insights. And so maybe to give a bit of context there, NEAR is the leading data intelligence source in the world on people and places. So we actually need to have some data on a lot of people in order to be able to understand those insights and help tourism boards in particular. So we collect data on over 1 billion people globally. We have some fairly accurate data on those people. So as Evan said, we need to be able to, understand like sort of the places they've been to, and this needs an accuracy of, like a dozen meters. We actually have hundreds of billions of data points every month. So where this data comes from, because like that sounds like magic, right? And there's no magic. It either comes from data that we own and operate, from mobile applications that we own and operate, or we work, and that's actually the majority of the data, comes from third-party data providers or applications that we work with and that basically share that data with us.
Great. So let's dig into some of that then a little bit, Benoit, a little bit deeper, because there's been a lot of news lately around these privacy updates, from Google, Apple, Facebook, right? All the big boys in the space, right? That would seem, at least on the surface, to possibly affect the collection of some of this geolocation data. So I'd love for you to share some of that. What exactly is happening with these privacy updates?
So a lot is actually happening,
Okay.
as you said. The ecosystem is evolving rapidly. I think if we take a step back, there is, and it goes way beyond NEAR, right? Like there is a lot of data being collected and used for many different purposes over the internet right now. We can say that the digital economy as a whole, it's actually like relies 100% on data. And I think since it really started with Cambridge Analytica and it kept growing over time, there's been a general awareness from the people about the fact that all this data is being collected and what's happening, because they were actually not aware of what was happening. So since over the last 5 years, we've seen more and more regulations, whether it's GDPR or CCPA, platform updates as well, whether it's Apple or Google or all the others. And we're talking right now about iOS 14 or iOS 15, but those features and changes have started since iOS 5 really. So it's there's nothing. It's really a major trend, and I think the main driver of all of this is that people want to have more transparency over what's going on with their data. They want to know what's going on, basically, and they want to have control. They want to make sure that they can choose what kind of data they're comfortable sharing or not, with whom, to what extent, etc. So, these are the high-level, context we're operating in. And so it indeed has a bunch of changes around the location data that the different players may have access to or not. And then, as you said, there are a bunch of different points of views, let's say, on what's happening. And I think it's really because all the different players are not impacted the same because of the different changes that are being put in place. For some people, because of the way their product is designed, there is no change at all. For others, or for different kind of products, it has huge impacts. And so I think that's why I wouldn't. It's not that each case is specific, but it can vary a lot between the different aspects of the economy and the ecosystem. So in particular, I think what we're seeing and what we've seen since GDPR is because the players are enforced to provide users with more transparency and control. People who were collecting data in an opaque way or without making sure that the users were providing their consent for that are actually seeing drastic declines in the amount of data that they have, because before that they were getting, let's say, 100% of the data, and now users are being provided with a pop-up which asks them for their consent. If 90% of the users do not give their consent, potentially this player may lose 90% of the data that's available. At Near, actually, we have not been impacted at all by iOS 14 for a very simple reason. Those transparency and control principles are really part of our DNA. So these are things that we're already enforcing, that we've been enforcing for several years. So, we were already basically filtering or not collecting data on users. We were not actually filtering them. We were just not collecting any data on them because they were not providing their consent for that. So the new change in iOS hasn't really impacted us at all. We have actually seen an increase in the overall amount of data that we are collecting compared to the beginning of the year. Because our business is growing pretty fast, we keep signing more partnerships. And so the amount of data that's available keeps increasing, basically.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because I think there's again so much confusion. I think you made a good point there, Benoit, about how this is going to, it's easy to make a blanket statement that it's going to affect. Yeah, it's going to have some effects, but it's definitely going to affect different folks in different ways. And the fact that it sounds like, on your end, that from a data compliance standpoint, you guys have been that way all along, you're going to feel less disruption than maybe others in the space who were doing things that maybe weren't following some of those guidelines. So that's interesting on that side. So then I want to do, as a follow-up, is really ask a little bit a deeper question, is maybe how then at all have these privacy changes really affected Near and your guys' data? Maybe if you could just share, what has changed, if anything, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, so actually it has changed quite a few things, not on the amount of data available for us because of what I was just saying, but there's a few things that have changed. I think the first one is we've been, addressing the market with this privacy approach for many years, and I think it's a pretty good thing for Near and actually for the whole ecosystem to have those principles enforced by the platforms, because I think those making sure that users are aware of what's going on and basically do whatever they want with their data is, I think, completely necessary to ensure users' trust. And I think if we're thinking long term, for an ecosystem that is sustainable, we want to make sure that it's absolutely necessary to have users' trust. So I think it's a pretty good thing for the ecosystem, because there were a bunch of behavior or businesses which were not providing that level of transparency, and this has resulted in a bunch of bad buzzes over the last few years, which are badly impacting the whole ecosystem, right? Like, sort of, we've all been aware of those, and I think we should we should not see that much in the future, because now I would say we can say that the ecosystem has matured a bit on that front. And so those behavior which were not acceptable for users are now prohibited by design. So I think that's a pretty good thing. That's a pretty good thing. And then in terms of how companies are affected, yes, I think the companies who were not as forward thinking on privacy matters may suffer from some disruptions related to the amount of data that's available to them.
Yeah, and yeah, good point. And we're seeing that disruption not only on the location side of things, right? As Apple's making these updates, we've seen it on the cookie side of things with marketers just in general, right? It's a cleaning up of the ecosystem, which is probably quite honestly needed to happen for quite a long time. There's always a few bad apples that are going to try to find ways to circumvent the system and move around. That happens, right? In marketers, unfortunately, some try to cut corners with things or try to do things, and you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar. So I think all in all, a lot of these changes are going to help to sift out the bad and make the good even better, right? And that's good for the end consumer, right? So excellent. Yeah, thanks for the insights on that. So I want to wrap it up, guys, with just some final advice. We always like to end the shows with that, and maybe I'll come back to you, Evan, on that side. Maybe any final advice for destination marketers out there that you want to share?
Yeah, I guess sort of out of what Benoit just walked through, there's sort of two pieces of advice I can touch on. One is pretty simple and straightforward, and what you realize is there's a lot of misinformation out there, almost like COVID vaccines. Right. There's a lot of misinformation, right? So what we always say is kind of believe the data, believe facts, look for those facts in all of this. And I think that dovetails well with my second recommendation, which is on who you work with in this space. Yes, I am kind of the face of our tourism industry here at Near. However, Near is way more than just Evan Saunders. We have a huge team, global team now behind us, constantly evaluating new data sources, constantly ensuring that we've always been compliant with all privacy protocols, and ensuring that we're delivering really great value to our partners in a really transparent way. So as you evaluate data sources and the data you're working with, also look at the team behind the data. And with that, always know that the team that's going to be responsible for your product and how they're innovating and coming up with solutions to circumnavigate or to really continue delivering you the value that you've always needed. I always tell our clients that privacy should never be on your shoulders. Privacy is on our shoulders. We ensure we adhere to all these privacy protocols, going back to GDPR and CCPA.
Yeah.
So it's on our shoulders to make sure we're compliant, doing so in a completely transparent way, and always delivering our partners basically the highest value of data that we can possibly get our hands on. But that just, again, goes with the idea of Near is way more than just Evan, and that's exactly the company hopefully you want to be working with.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, those are some of the things that attracted us to you guys in the first place, because as we use you guys as well. So Benoit, any parting words for you or advice you want to leave DMOs out there?
I think, I've completely. I'm not going to repeat what Evan just said, but to add something to this, I think we expect the amount of data that we collect and the level of the insights that we share to grow over the next few years. We're actually investing on the product to bring new features and to keep delivering more value to our customers. So I think we are definitely thinking long term there, and I think what we're seeing here, as you were saying, is a huge change to the ecosystem. Like overall, if you think about the internet industry, the previous big revolution was mobile, and like the changes to cookies and data in general is probably the next revolution after that. So which we're living right now. So it's pretty exciting. And I think for a company like us, it's actually like Near, it's actually a great opportunity because we're clearly coming stronger out of this.
Yeah, gentlemen, thank you so much. Again, as I mentioned, I think mobile intelligence data has really been a game changer for DMOs. For so long, we did struggle with trying to, help tell that story of how our marketing efforts are making impact and are we reaching the right people with our messaging. And I think a lot of what you guys have to provide in general really helps us do that. So Evan and Benoit, thank you guys for taking time out of your day to join us.
Thank you, Jason.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks for tuning in each and every week. If you're not subscribed, please do so now. We're also available on iTunes and Spotify if you like to consume us through audio podcasts. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.